Hey, welcome to Dan Harsh and Associates, 5 Steps to Improve Sales. I put together a 5-step video series on 5 tips, 5 steps to improve sales. Some of the steps for each of these videos, and step 1, which is what you're going to be watching now, is we're going to lay out how do we define our sales goal. Video 2, you'll see links to all of these videos down below. You can jump into any one of these. Feel free to do that. Video 2 is going to be on create an effective sales strategy and structure. That's going to be a pretty detailed video. The next video, video 3, is define your messaging and channels. We're going to talk about how do we define this message and how do we apply the message to the various channels that we're going to deliver it. Then we're going to have a video on placing people, the right people in the right positions. And this is a pretty interesting video. I think we're all going to be able to relate to it. And then the last one is making CRM integral to our sales process and our sales structure. So you can feel free to jump into any one of those. All the links are down below. But hey, let's get started into step 1, defining your sales goal. What I've done is I've broken this out. I've broken this step out into 5 different steps, and we're going to go through each one of those steps. The first step is give this the time and attention it requires. We're going to talk about removing current and past years' barriers. How do we think outside the box? Where do we get started? We're going to look at our end goal, and then we're going to talk about this why. And you're going to see this why in a lot of the videos in each of these 5 steps. So let's get started defining your sales goal. Give this the time and attention it requires. Why do I say give it the time and attention it requires? Well, you don't want to take this step lightly. Keep in mind that whatever you define, whatever you decide on what your sales goal is, everything moving forward is going to be dictated or predicated based on that number. Your strategy is going to be based on that number. Your structure is going to be based on that number. Your messaging, everything's going to be based on this number. So we don't want to just fly through and assign a number. I think a lot of people, what they do is they take last year's number and then they simply add X to it. We did X last year, therefore I want to do X plus. And although we all want to do more this year than we did last year, and next year we want to do more than we did this year, but we got to have some strategy and some rationale and some structure behind why that number is what it is. So we don't want to arrive on it too quickly. Keep in mind that the goal, this goal that you're defining, this goal is as important as your strategy. So step number 1, take the time to come up with this number. The next step we're going to talk about is removing current and past years' barriers. And let's talk about that. As I approach thinking about sales and defining the goal, the last thing I want to do is limit myself by thinking within the boundaries or the barriers that I have. My boundaries, my barriers, and let's face it, we all have them, right? In our personal lives, we have them, and we have them in our workforce, in our company, in our sales group. But for the sake of this exercise, I want to remove those boundaries. I want to remove those barriers. I want to be able to think clearly about what really is my best number that I can come up with. And if I contain myself within some boundaries, I'm not going to be able to do that. So what I am proposing for you is mentally discard your current sales structure, your personnel and limitations. What do I mean by that? We all have limitations within our sales groups, whether that be technology, whether that be individuals, whatever it may be, whether it's our messaging, whatever that may be. I want to put that aside for now. If I didn't have that in front of me, what would my sales goal be? If I didn't have any inhibitors, if I didn't have anything that I knew was going to hold me back, what would that sales number be? And I'm not talking pie in the sky stuff. I'm just saying let's discard that for this exercise. Keep in mind, we can move barriers and boundaries. We can minimize barriers and boundaries. I can work around boundaries, and I can eliminate barriers and boundaries. So I don't want them to be part of my thought process. I want to come up with what's the best sales goal for my company and my group. Keep in mind, your barriers may be holding you back. So let's put those aside. So we talked about giving it the time, attention. We said, hey, let's remove barriers and boundaries from our thinking. And the next step, well, let's think outside the box. Thinking outside the box, I think for some, that's a scary thing. Thinking outside the box is not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that we're crazy. It doesn't mean we're unorthodox. It doesn't mean this is going to cost more money if I think outside the box. It doesn't even mean that I'm going to implement, what I'm doing. It just says, hey, I don't want to be contained in this box. I want to think outside the box. I want to be free to come up with the best possible plan that I can come up with, the best possible goal that I can come up with. Thinking outside the box, it simply means you're considering all options. You're going to contemplate new ideas, evaluate alternatives. You're creating the best plan. Why? Because you're not inhibiting, you're not containing yourself within certain boundaries. I want to get outside of that. I want to come up with what's best for my organization. And to do that, I got to remove those barriers and I got to think outside the box. Keep in mind, we're defining our sales goal. What's that sales goal need to be if I don't have these barriers? Where do I start? If you do what I just suggested, okay, I'm going to take the time to do this. I'm going to remove my current barriers. I'm going to start thinking outside the box. But where do I start? How do I come up with this goal? Well, I think a good place to start is let's look out to where you may want to be. Where do you want to be a year from now? What would your sales goal look like a year from now? Let's take a look at that. What would you like a year from now? Is it new business from new customers? If so, what's that look like? How much new business from new customers do I want? Maybe I'm trying to grow my existing customer base. Maybe I have new products and services I need to get out into my existing customer base. What would I want that to look like a year from now? How much do I think I could sell into that existing customer base? How many new customers do I think I could get? Remember, how many can I get if I don't have the barriers and the boundaries that I have right now? Maybe it's a certain revenue level. Maybe you're a small company and you want to get to that $1 million mark. Maybe you're a small, mid-sized company, you want to get to that $10 million mark. Is there a number you want to get to? How do I get to that? What is that number? Remember, keep in mind, I don't have boundaries. Maybe you're trying to form a new revenue stream. Maybe you want to diversify your sales, your revenue, so you're not so dependent on one medium. Maybe it's something totally different. Maybe it's all of this. But where would you like to be a year from now? What does that look like? What would the size of your group look like? That's probably a good place to start. If that's where I want to be, okay, then how do I get there? I don't have these barriers that I've had in the past. I put those aside. If that's my number, then how do I get there? This is where it gets a little interesting. Why? Why is that your sales goal? You're going to find throughout this 5-step video series, I ask the question why often. Why, for me, is a check and balance. Why is a good thing to ask in everyday life? Why would I make this decision? Why would I move this direction? Why would I say yes? Why would I say no? Why? Why is this the reason for this sales goal that I'm assigning? Then, is your why realistic? Bounce it off of somebody. Is it realistic? Does it make good business sense? Do you have short and long-term goals? Is the why for why you want that to be your goal, does that meet your short and long-term benefits? Does the why minimize maybe some stress and pain throughout other areas of your organization? Does your reason why increase profit margin? You have to ask why, because why is kind of that sanity check. It's the check and balance to make sure that your number, your goal, is right and it's realistic. So those are some 5 steps. This video has been a relatively short one, but there's 5 steps to think about as you define your sales goal. Give it the time. Take the time. Remove those barriers. Don't let those barriers dictate your thinking. Get outside the box. You could come up with new plans, new structures, and we're going to talk about that in some of the other videos. Answer why. Where do you want to be a year from now? All good things to think about in defining your sales goal. Well, hey, that is step 1 in 5 steps to improve your sales goal. Video 2, as I mentioned, you got the links down below. Video 2, we're going to talk about creating an effective sales strategy and structure. This is pretty interesting. This video is going to get very detailed. It's going to get into the weeds a little bit. I think you're going to like it. But hey, thanks for tuning into this first video. Check the links out below, and I'll catch up with you on video 2. Talk to you soon.